Shall we start now?
Yes, Sakshi, please.
A very good and warm morning to everyone. We are in a third successful day on National Nutrition Week celebration 2021. I'm Akshay. I take the privilege of comparing the scientific talk by Ms. Deepa Lakshmi, clinical nutritionist and registered dietitian, organized by the Department of Nutrition, Food Service Management and Dietetics from Srimati Dekunvar Nananalbad Vaishnav College of Women, Chromepet. The most powerful weapon against trials, the most effective medicines against sickness, and the most valuable gift to someone you love is a prayer. Let's begin today's program with a prayer song.
Satyavritam Satyaparam Trisatyam Satyasya yonim nihitam cha satye Satyasya satyam Hrita satyanetram Satyatmakam Tvam sharanam Prapannaha Vani gunanukatane Shravanau kataya Hastau cha karmasu Manastava padayonaha Smrityam shirastava Nivasa jagat praname Drishti sada Darshanestu bhavattanuna Namo bhagavate tasmai Krishnaya Buddha karmane Rupanama vibedena Rupanama vibedena Jagat kridati yoyataha Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
The proper diet increases the general immune system, which will prevent diseases, especially in patients infected. In addition, nutrition has a role in recovering the sick. Malnutrition can make a person more susceptible to infection, and infection also contributes to malnutrition, which causes a vicious cycle. An inadequate dietary intake leads to weight loss, lowered immunity, mucosal damage, invasion by pathogens, and impaired growth and development in children. We'd like to extend a special welcome to our guest of honor, Ms. Deepa Lakshmi, to illuminate us with the topic of the day, nutrition in infection. Heartily welcome, ma'am. I call upon my friend Irfana Jagan to introduce our eminent speaker of the day.
The keynote speaker we have for today is a versatile personality, Ms. Deepa Lakshmi Sriram. It is with pride that I wish to say that Madam is an alumna of our department. She is a registered dietitian who has clinical exposure in all specialties ranging from pediatrics to geriatrics. She is currently working as a clinical nutritionist in the Smile Train project at Sri Ramachandra Hospital. Her specialty includes nutritional management of children with cleft lip, palate, and Pierre-Robin syndrome. Ms. Deepa Lakshmi's forte includes designing individualized meal plans to help patients achieve nutrition and weight loss goals, management of chronic condition, enhancing personal wellness, and to incorporate practical nutritional application, including enteral and parenteral nutrition support techniques. She is a certified diabetes educator who has been invited as a resource person to non-governmental organizations and educational institutions. She has published her works in reputed journals. Deepa Lakshmi ma'am has previously worked as a clinical nutritionist, ICU in MGM Healthcare. I am glad to inform you all that our guest of honor has received the Best Entrepreneur Award from our esteemed institution, Srimati Dekunvar Nanlalbat, Vaishnav College for Women. I wish to extend a warm welcome to you, Madam, on behalf of the Department of Nutrition, Food Service Management and Dietetics.
Thank you, Urpana Jagan. It's my pleasure to welcome Madam Deepalakshmi to take over the session.
Good morning to one and all here. Thank you for your warm welcome. So I'll just share my screen. You're able to view my screen, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so I'm going to be discussing about nutrition and infection. So some of the learning objectives are going to be the interaction between the nutrition and infection, the effect of infection on nutritional status, and how the malnutrition can lead to infection. This is going to be the objective of the talk. So my entire presentation is going to be categorized like this. So first I'll be telling about the introduction on malnutrition and immunity, the vicious cycle, how malnutrition is related to infection and infection is related to malnutrition, the effects, the relationship, and the take-home message. Okay, so let's start with malnutrition. So if you see, malnutrition is nothing but it refers to a deficiency, excess, or imbalance in a person's intake of energy or nutrients. Malnutrition can be categorized into three different types. Number one is undernutrition. Number two is micronutrient related malnutrition. Number three is obesity, overweight, and other related things. So undernutrition is nothing but when a child or any adult is has wasting, stunting, and underweight, it is known as undernutrition. Wasting is nothing but when there is a low weight for height when you plot on the Z scores or growth charts. Stunting is when there's a low height for age, and underweight is when there is a low weight for age. Whereas micronutrient related malnutrition, it covers your vitamin A deficiency, vitamin C, iron deficiency, and it can also include your toxicity as well. Talking about the overweight and obesity, so BMI greater than 30, 35, 40, and other related NCDs will all come under malnutrition. So now let's see how malnutrition is related to infection. So if you see, malnutrition is the primary cause of immunodeficiency worldwide. Like be it any population, you take it infant, you take children, you take adolescent, or you take any elderly. So malnutrition is a major cause of immunodeficiency worldwide. If you see, there's a very strong relationship between malnutrition and infection, be it mortality. Why? The reason is when there is a poor nutrition, it leaves the children underweight and they are weak and they are more susceptible to infections, primarily because of epithelial integrity and inflammation. Let's see how it all occurs. So if you see, this is a recent WHO report 2009. It talks about how the undernutrition affects the death case. If you see, the shaded area is nothing but it contributes undernutrition. Like for example, if you see the diarrhea, if you see, it is 17%, out of which 73% contributes to undernutrition, because of which it resulted in this much of things. So these were the mortality rate based on nutritional deficiencies, malaria, the measles, the injuries, the pneumonias. So let's see what is immunity so that we can correlate it. So if you see, immunity is nothing but it's basically a capacity for our body, how it resists against the pathogenic agents, be it bacteria, virus, or toxic substances. It's like basically, it's like a resistance for our body. Okay. So immunity, if you see, is classified into two types. Number one is innate immunity. Number two is acquired immunity. So let's see what all these are. So innate immunity, if you see, it's the basic or the inborn capacity which is already present in your body. You don't require any vaccines or something which is required. It is present in your body. And in chance or by this thing, even if the organisms enter into the body, they eliminate before the development of any disease. So it is called as the natural or non-specific immunity. So this innate immunity, it's like more like a first line of defense against any pathogens like bacteria, virus, or etc. Also, it's called as a non-specific immunity. So innate immunity, if you see, these are some of the places where the innate immunity occurs. Like if we say, for example, of skin, even before the toxic chemicals come in contact, the lysosome that's secreted in the skin, they destroy the bacteria. The beta deficients in the skin, they have antimicrobial peptides. which will, it's more like a defense that it does not allow the pathogens to enter inside the body. Be it, if you take in the example of a GI tract, the enzymes in the gastric juices and the acids, they destroy the toxic substances which is coming along with the food. And if you see the lysosome present in the saliva, they destroy the bacteria that again enters the food. And talking about the respiratory system, the epithelial cells, the NKC, the natural killer cells, neutrophils, the lymphocytes, the macrophages, they all in the lung, they're present, and they are totally against the bacteria and the virus that enters into the system. And talking about the urogenital system, the acidity in the urine and the vaginal fluid destroys the bacteria. So the phagocytes, if you see the white blood cells, the neutrophils, the monocytes, the macrophages, they ingest the pathogens like bacteria and virus, and by the mechanism of phagocytosis, they destroy those foreign bodies. So this is how the innate immunity occurs. Now, talking about the second type of immunity is nothing but the acquired immunity. Acquired immunity, if you see, it is not present in your body. It is that nothing but the resistance after your body, after the pathogen enters inside the body, the resistance develops in such a way that it destroys the toxins. So if you see, this type of immunity is called as a specific immunity, because based on, for example, if there's a bacteria that is specifically entered into your body, particularly for that bacteria, there will be a resistance developed to kill the bacteria. So that is the acquired immunity. So if you see, it is the most powerful immune mechanism which protects the body from invading organisms or toxic substances. So the main reason for this is nothing but lymphocytes are responsible for acquired immunity. So let's see what are lymphocytes, the different types. So if you see the types of acquired immunity, there are two types. One is a cellular immunity, one is a humoral immunity. So lymphocytes are responsible for the development of these two types of immunity. So again, if you see, lymphocytes are categorized into two different types. One is a beta cell, another is a T cell. Okay. So this figure represents the differences between the innate and the adaptive immunity. So innate, as I already said, the basophil, eosinophil, neutrophil, the mast cell, the NKC will come under innate immunity. The adaptive immunity, the B cell and the T cell. So the T cells are nothing but they are produced in the thymus, which is why it's called as T cell. If you see, it basically occurs during the period just before birth and few months after the birth. So this, if you see, it increases in the activity of lymphocytes in the lymphoid tissue and plays a very important role in immunity. It accelerates the proliferation and activation of lymphocytes in the thymus, through which it is being produced. Whereas B lymphocytes or B cells are present in the liver during the fetal life, that is in the fetus, and once the child is being birthed, it will be present in the bone marrow. Okay, so this is the small flowchart of immunity. So just to cover, immunity is again categorized into two types, innate and acquired. Innate is present naturally in the body, acquired is developed after an organism illness. So here is the classification of the T lymphocyte and the B lymphocyte and how it gets distracted the invading the organism by direct and antibodies. So let's move on to the cycle of malnutrition and infection. If you see, malnutrition can make a person more susceptible to infection and vice versa, which causes the vicious cycle. So when there's an inadequate dietary intake, which leads to weight loss, lowered immunity, mucosal damage, invasion by pathogens, and impaired growth and development in children. As well as when a person is sick, the nutrition is further aggravated by diarrhea, malabsorption, loss of appetite, diversion of nutrients for the immune response, and therefore there is a increase the nutrient loss and further damage to the defense mechanisms. So if you see, this is the vicious cycle where the undernutrition is related to the malnutrition, and undernutrition is cycle to infection and infection to cycle to undernutrition. So if you see, both of it goes prolonged, like it goes hand in hand. So this is nothing, it's called as Synderism. Synderism is when the infection aggravates malnutrition and malnutrition lowers resistance to infection. The relationship between the malnutrition and infection is known as Synderism. Okay, so it's nothing but when there's a simultaneous presence of malnutrition and infection, which results in an interaction that is more serious for the individual than would be expected from a combined effect of two working independently. So if you see, I'll just give you an example how it all works out. So if you see the effect of malnutrition infection, it is at a higher rate of child death in poor households and communities in India. For example, let's take a locality where there is poverty and in a rural area. When there is a child that is born less than 2.5 kgs, which is like very less birth weight. That has happened because there is an inadequate dietary intake of the mother during pregnancy. Maybe she wouldn't have a proper weight gain during pregnancy, because of which the child is born in a low birth weight. And also, if the child is being prolongedly breastfed for more than 2 years and have not started a complementary feeds, or if there's a delay in the complementary feeding, there would be resulting in the child's growth and development. That is, it would compromise the child's development, which would result in weight loss. That is, there won't be a proper weight gain, proper height, weight will not be expected, therefore, which will result in malnutrition. This is how it goes. So, when there is a reduced food intake or inadequate diet, that will result to undernutrition. Also, the poor environment and lack of hygiene is very common in rural areas, which is for the children they are present there are further exposed to infections like diarrhea, respiratory tract, because of which again there will be reduction of food intake, because the child will be because of having the infection, the child will be having a loss of appetite. As a result, there is a slow growth, slowing down of the growth. So this is the synergetic effect. Now let's see how the dietary deficit and infection will occur. So a cumulative effect of dietary deficit and infection, it produces retardation of physical growth in children, leading to stunting. So stunting, if you see, it's the effects of stunting are like very, very long lasting. Even if the child who has been severely stunted, even if they grow into an adult, if you see, they have a reduced work capacity and they cannot be economically productive. So it is very, very important to screen for malnutrition, and we have to give the make sure they don't go to the next step because of the malnutrition. It should not go to the infection. So proper nutrition intervention should be done at every point of time. So let's see the vicious cycle, how exactly it happens. So if you see, I'm taking malnutrition here. So if you see the malnutrition, because of malnutrition, the child would have been they wouldn't have been eating well, because of which there's a compromised barrier defense. That is, the immune system, whatever I was discussing previously, the NKC cells, the antibody production will be reduced. So when the antibody production is being reduced, there is an increased risk of infection. When there is an increased risk of infection, there is an increased basal metabolic rate, because of which the child intake will be less, leading to the protein catabolism, that is leading to the starvation. That is when the normal human being, when they don't eat properly, automatically all the nutrients in your muscles, tissues, the liver, they start being used up for the production of calories. So there is a negative nitrogen balance leading to wasting, and that's how it leads to malnutrition. It's just a crisp. So as we go into detail, I'll be explaining about each and everything that's happening here. So what happens when there is a malnutrition or infection? So the number one point, if you see, there is a lowered immunity. So when there is a healthy individual, if you see, when the child who's been very, very healthy, even if they have a low risk of infection, they can produce antibodies to fight the disease. Whereas if the child or adult is malnourished, they cannot produce antibodies properly. Therefore, the disease fighting capacity is lowered, which is making them more prone to infections. So this is, if you see, the immunity plays a very important role on malnutrition. So this is how it is. So when there is an infectious disease that's present, there is an increased risk of death and increased energy needs, thereby reducing immunity. Now, let's see the effect of integrity of skin and mucous membrane. In a healthy, well-fed individual, the mucosal membrane, the skin, everything will be very healthy. That is, there'll be like a barrier for the infection to enter into the body. The pathogens like bacteria, virus, infections will not be entered. But if the individual is suffering from the malnutrition, the protective mechanism that is present in the skin, the natural killer cells, the eosiophil, basophil, all the innate and acquired immunity will be diminished. So, therefore, the dietary adequacy will diminish the resistance to the infection by reducing the integrity of various tissues. So, what happens is the mucosal membrane is very permeable and it favors the pathogen to enter into their body. so which will result into development of the disease. Now, if you see, let's see the topic infection and the nutritional status. So let's see what is nutrition status. Nutrition status refers to the condition of the health of an individual as influenced by the utilization of the nutrients. Infection, no matter how mild or how moderate, it will have an effect on the nutritional status. So this is an individual who has been let's take he's an individual who is healthy and he has been affected with an infection. Okay, so because of this infection, the person would be having reduced appetite, reduced intake, because of which there is an increased energy needs. But what happens is in our in our situation or thing, whenever if an individual suffers from fever or diarrhea or anything, usually if you see a custom is made such a way that they practice giving gruel, the starchy gruels, which have very less nutritive value, and even the solid foods will be restricted in the times of fever or diarrhea, thinking that the digestive system is put to rest. But already the adult or the infant will be malnourished, and like they will be requiring more energy needs, but they're not being met, because of which they'll be undernutrition. I mean, they'll be undernourished. Okay, because of that being undernourished, there is a reduced immunity and there is an increased risk of disease. So this is in the point of infection to malnutrition. So as I said already, if the person gets sick, they cannot consume the food because of the loss of appetite. And not just that, even when there is a fever or anything, we will start with antibiotics for the infection. So because of that, there will be reduced food intake. And even if the condition gets prolonged, over a period of time, there will be consistent decrease in the food intake, further leading to the nutritional deficiencies. So this is the loss of appetite is the first important thing. And as I said already, right, the unfavorable cultural practices. So it is believed that the solid foods, milk, are like literally avoided, and they've been given like very bland starchy gruels, which are low nutritive value, to provided to rest the digestive system. This practice should not be followed because it contributes to the poor nutritional status. So this should be withdrawn. So that's what I was trying to tell you over this. And if you see, because of our intestines, most of the vitamins, minerals, they will get absorbed in the intestines, the parts. So when there is an infection, the intestines function is compromised. That is, the main functions are digestion, absorption, and it propels the food. So when all of the functions are being affected due to the infection, there is a malabsorption that takes place, and because of which the nutrients will lead to, nutrients are not being absorbed, and it could lead to deficiency. So this is the total flow chart or how it occurs. If you see, as I said, there is a reduced internal absorption of vitamins like vitamin A, vitamin B, vitamin C, and the traditional behaviors such as giving the gruels, avoiding the solid foods, and also anorexia. Anorexia as in the patient or the child will not be able to eat well because of the loss of appetite and the metabolic damage, the free radicals, and these things. And there is a reduction of vitamin concentration. And because there's a deficiency and the absorption, there can be iron deficiency, zinc and copper deficiency. If you see, the zinc and copper are very good immune system, like they help in protecting from free radicals. But when there is a deficiency, all of these, nothing but they weaken the body's ability to fight infection, which will result to malnutrition here. Now, not just this, we'll have to even think about the hookworm infestations, roundworm infestations. These are some of the most common intestinal parasites all worldwide. If you see, these are associated with decreased child growth. Because if you see, whenever there's a hookworm infestation, whatever might the child or the adult may eat, the entire the nutrients will all go to the worm and not go to them, and because of which there will be loss of weight, because whatever they've been eating will not get absorbed, and there will be decreased child growth, and there's a chronic blood loss. And iron deficiency anemia is very, very common with hookworm infestations, diarrhea, and it will result in stunted growth. So worm and parasite infection should be the first priority to be seen while screening for malnutrition, especially in rural areas. And talking about protein loss, See, whenever there's an infection, there are particular nutrients, especially proteins, they are lost and excreted from the body, which will result in poor nutrition status. For example, when there is a diarrhea or a dysentery, the body produces an average of 0.9 grams of protein per kg body weight per day. So there's a loss of 0.9 grams protein. Whereas the higher losses are observed in cases of fever cases and acute infections, reaching to 1.2 gram protein per kg body weight per day. So such losses, if you see, which will contribute to the increased requirement of protein during infection and fevers, but that's not happening. Like only when there is an infection or fever, that's the time when the individual itself is taking a low intake. So if you see, this all will lead to undernutrition over a period of time. So this is the take-home message. So undernutrition will lead to infection, and infection will lead to undernutrition. Because of undernutrition, there is a decreased immune function, that is, there's an innate and acquired. And infection, if you see, there is an impaired absorption, which will lead to altered gut lumen and mucosal injury. Thank you. I would like to add another figure. Okay, I think I missed out this figure. This is number 1, whereas the child itself is undernourished. That is, if the child itself is undernourished, there is a reduced immunity and there is an increased risk of disease, which causes the increased length of stay in the hospital, and there is a severity of illness, which will again lead to malnutrition. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am, for the detailed view on immunity, the problem we face during infection, and the type of infection we come across, and how to overcome those infections with the right nutrition. So once again, thank you, ma'am, for the illustrious, knowledgeable session. Ma'am,
Yeah.
can we have question and answer session?
Yeah, if you want me to talk about anything, I'll just do it.
Yes, sure. Now I call upon Sneha to put forth some questions in front of.
Yeah, sure.
Good morning, ma'am. It was a wonderful session. Thank you for that, ma'am. So the first question for today's session is, ma'am, can a better diet help in early identification of symptoms of malnutrition or infection, ma'am?
Definitely. Diet is like very, very important in cases of malnutrition, infection. That's the time where you have to give a high calorie and high protein, so that the person will be able to overcome the infection. So diet does definitely play a very important role in infection.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. And malnutrition and improper nutrition, which one is dangerous, ma'am?
Both. See, improper nutrition itself will lead to malnutrition.
Yes.
Like improper nutrition, like micronutrient deficiencies, everything will lead to malnutrition. So vice versa. Both of them are dangerous.
Okay. How can we identify malnutrition in bariatric people, ma'am? Like in child, we can identify with nutrition intervention programs, and in rural areas, we can get to know that common malnutrition will be like PEM. But in bariatric people, how can we identify that, ma'am?
Bariatric or geriatric?
Bariatric, ma'am.
Bariatric. See, when a patient undergoes a bariatric surgery or anything, since there is a cut in the stomach, in the absorption of the micronutrients are already diminished. Okay, there will not be a proper absorption of micronutrients, and they require a lot of supplementations. Usually, when any patients undergoing a bariatric procedure, they will be put on proteins, micronutrients, supplementation to avoid malnutrition. So we'll have to, before doing any surgery, you'll have to see, because as I said, the intestine is the place where all the micronutrients will get absorbed.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Is wasting not a preferable indication of undernutrition in areas with high prevalence of stunting, ma'am?
No, if you see wasting, yes, it is there, but stunting is very, very important than wasting, because if you see stunting is like, though it's considered like we're not considering as a very major thing parameter, but that is actually the very most parameter. In case if you don't know the child's date of birth or anything, the stunting and MUAC, it plays a very important role in identifying malnutrition. And if you see, the more the stunting, there is a greater rate of death, mortality is there.
Okay. Nutrients like glutamine, arginine have potential clinical usefulness in malnutrition, ma'am.
Yes.
Likewise, which other nutrients will help in infections and how can we add it into our diet, ma'am?
Okay. So talking about the nutrients for infection, a general balanced diet. A balanced diet with, a balanced diet as in, I meant a lot of high calorie, a high protein, micronutrients like vitamin C, protein, iron, vitamin E, through all your regular fruits, vegetables, the nuts, that itself will provide you all the nutrients. You do not require any supplementation when you can take all the foods through your diet.
Okay.
Apart from this, yes, the omega-3, omega-6 fatty acids, all of this also play an important role.
Okay, ma'am. Like as you said, ma'am, skin is the first barrier in infection, in external factors. But in burn patients, almost all of the skin is damaged, if it is damaged, and chances for parental and enteral nutrition is increased. How can it be, or how it will overcome the malnutrition, ma'am?
Okay. See, talking about burns is like a very big trauma or sepsis will be happening. And if you see, they'll be losing a lot of protein loss will be there, nitrogen loss will be there initially. And the first point should be is you have to replenish the fluid that the patient has lost.
Okay.
After which you'll have to basically there's something you guys know about the TBSA?
Ma'am?
TBSA. Okay. TBSA is total burn surface area. Okay.
Yes.
So we give extra calories and extra protein. There are a lot of formulas. There's Curary formula. Based on it, you'll have to calculate. So there is an increased protein, increased calories, and based on the support, you'll have to think if the patient is has a very less burn, less than 20% or 30% burn, and the where is the burn area, that also will matter when you're thinking of the support, nutrition support. If the patient is has second degree, third degree burns, you'll have to think if it's going to be a long term, you go for an enteral nutrition. A short term, then you go for a parental nutrition.
Okay.
If the gut is functioning, go for the enteral. If it's not functioning, you go for the parental. Simple.
Okay. And if loss of appetite is more, ma'am, whether parental nutrition, in general, they're not able to consume by mouth. So which can be the best source of nutrition, either parental or enteral, ma'am?
No, just for the loss of appetite's sake, you don't start with enteral or parental nutrition. Okay. You can start at least with, you mean the patient cannot swallow itself, or how you're asking?
Patient cannot swallow, and if you're having any problems in the oral or esophageal area, ma'am.
Okay, in that case, okay, it's a loss of appetite along with the problems in dysphagia, swallowing, right? So in that case, you go for enteral, not a problem. But if the patient has only the loss of appetite, you can start oral nutrition supplements like Ensure and any products. So that will, instead of having just fluids and granules, you can add it to their diet so that at least they can get a surplus of calories.
Okay, ma'am. And how, what are the simple steps can be taken up to avoid parasitic infections, ma'am?
Parasitic infections, basically, if you see, it's more common in children. So hygiene practices should be very, very important, washing the hands, and even after playing in the mud or anything, they should always wash your hands, because in the nails, those things, when they eat and all of it, they could enter. And also, talking about pigs and all, it should be well cooked, because it's not common in our culture. But when people start having pork or anything, there are worms that's present in their abdomen, which people by mistake, when it's raw or uncooked, they tend to eat it. And not just that, even all the non-vegetarian foods should be well cooked to avoid such problems.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am, for sparing your valuable time to get connected with us on the National Nutrition Week Celebration 2021. A healthy diet supports a normal growth, development, and aging, helps to maintain a healthy body weight, and reduces the risk of chronic disease leads to overall health and well-being. Nutrition is the only remedy that can bring a full recovery and can be used without any treatment. Remember, food is one of the best medicine. With this, we come to an end of today's session. Stay tuned for the next scientific talk on first 1000 days of a child by Mrs. Jasmine Abubakar on 4th September 2021. Thank you. Stay safe.